To value or not to value? That is not the question. Scholars and colleagues argue that it will be more fruitful to ask how, when, and under what conditions we should provide monetary value estimates for ecosystems or natural resources. Now that we have looked into the how, let us consider when or under what conditions. Quoting their page 100, before deciding whether to accept a monetary value on a resource or ecosystem service, one has to ask, 1. Will that improve the environmental conditions at stake? 2. Will it reduce inequalities and redistribute power? 3. Is it likely to suppress other languages of valuation and value articulating institutions? And 4. Will it serve the process of enclosure of the commons? The latter two criteria express the fear that monetary valuation may serve as a first step in the process of further exploitation of nature or people by either drowning out sustainability or justice considerations in trade-offs, or by facilitating the process of privatization and extending the neoliberal capitalistic reach. Hanley and Roberts open their discussion with the provoking question: how much we require people to know about an issue before counting their preference as part of decision making. Hanley and Roberts continue by pointing out that those that are more knowledgeable about the environment have shown higher willingness to pay for conservation measures. The suggestion not to count some preferences does seem to present a slippery slope. However, the counterpart where all preferences in relation to conservation are counted equally may not always be desirable either. Let me quote Krautkamer to illustrate. Attempts to measure the taste of consumers or willingness to pay in actual or hypothetical markets are not very productive if those tastes or values and corresponding lifestyles are unsustainable in the sense that they systematically contribute to a degraded environment. Since individual preferences play a fundamental role in neoclassical economics, the role of consumer sovereignty in social decision-making is an area of disagreement between ecological economics and neoclassical economics that is unlikely to be resolved. Who recognizes the following alien species in the Netherlands? Both the rose-ringed parakeet and the muskrat are aliens in the Netherlands, but as the muskrat has higher costs to dikes, there is active management to control their population size. The Oregon grape and the Himalayan balsam are also both aliens in the Netherlands. The Himalayan balsam is frequently seen in green strips alongside canals in Apeldoorn, and like the muskrat, listed on the European Union's invasive alien species of Union Concern list, which now legally prevents them from being traded, transported or planted. Perhaps it is illustrative that more of you recognize the muskrat and parakeet than both plants. It hints at another difficulty with valuation of nature through preferences. That is, many people suffer from plant blindness. Plant blindness is a cognitive bias proposed by Wandersee and Schlussler, and it refers to a human tendency to ignore plants relative to animals. One can see this bias reflected in conservation policy as well. For example, Havens and colleagues point out that plants dominate the US endangered species list, but receive less than 4% of federal conservation funding. The progress with plant identification apps and citizen science may be helpful to overcome this plant blindness. See a recent review by Jose and colleagues for more examples. The discussion by Hanley and Roberts on invasive alien species management also touched on the question until when one considers a species as alien, and on the importance of public support for control measures. For example, range shifts of species due to climate change may be more problematic for some species, like disease-carrying mosquitoes, whereas for other species, management may not be necessary. The importance of public support is perhaps best illustrated by the management of cat predation on endangered island fauna or marsupials in Australia. What is acceptable policy here? In Darwin in de Stad, Schildhuisen argues that the concept of alien species may be of less relevance to our urban ecosystems, as most cities already house more non-native than native plants. Yet behavior in cities can have spillovers to the wider environment, so maybe we should restrict public spending on green spaces to native plants. I am not sure to what extent such a policy would be desirable. I do enjoy alien berries from the Oregon grapes from Public Green in Apeldoorn. There may be educational benefits and damage may be limited as long as the species are not invasive. In my review, I have hardly touched on the importance of awareness campaigns and nature education. We will return to some topics that touch on nature valuation in the last lecture, where we look into eco-emotions and the laws of human-nature connections. In relation to nature and mental health, I wanted to highlight the study by Buckley and colleagues, who use a type of production function methodology to estimate mental health benefits from protected areas. They find a conservative global estimate using quality adjusted life years, a standard measure in health economics, is $6 trillion per year. This is an order of magnitude greater than the global value of protected area tourism and 2 to 3 orders greater than the global aggregate protected management agency budgets. Finally, I'd like to mention an item from last month's news relevant to orangutan conservation and possibly conservation efforts more broadly. It seems that Trump type of methods aimed at creating an alternative reality based on alternative facts or falsehoods is now applied by Indonesia, its environment and forestry minister. During International Orangutan Day, the minister had claimed that orangutan numbers were steadily increasing and no longer in danger of extinction. The inaccuracies of this claim were pointed out by Dutch biologist Meijert and colleagues in an article for the Jakarta Post. Meijert, who has been studying orangutans in Indonesia for over 30 years, got banned from Indonesia shortly after the publication. Today we looked into the valuation of nature and ecosystem services and various methods of estimating monetary value of nature, where use values can be estimated with the travel cost method or hedonic pricing, and non-use values through contingent valuation. We looked into some applications of ecosystem service valuation, such as payment for ecosystem service programs. We saw that when combining ecosystem service value estimates, it shows a loss over the past decades, and I have argued that the ecosystem service estimates can potentially be used to illustrate the benefits of a beaver. Before closing my lecture on valuation methods, let me give some examples of values of nature that may defy valuation. Many people find a sense of wonder in nature. Some find a sense of oneness or completeness, and many find hope in nature. The entire topic of valuation of nature can be perceived as odd for those that perceive themselves as one with nature, or for those that perceive nature or certain natural sites as sacred. Yet, as illustrated with the quote by Costanza and colleagues at the start of this lecture, monetary value estimates of ecosystems remain important for trade-offs that involve nature. This slide contains an overview of the literature used today. Again, in two parts, here is the literature used today. Next week in environmental economics, we will revisit the desirability of economic growth with the Kuznets curve, limits of innovation with Jeffen's paradox, and happiness economics with Easterlin's paradox. Thank you for your attention. In case you like any of the videos, feel welcome to share or subscribe. Hope to see you back for the next lecture.